Unity's fourth principle says, through affirmative prayer and meditation, I connect with God and bring out the good in my life. So let's take this time together to connect with God and bring out the good in our lives with our prayer partner, Susan Hagar. Good morning,
Thank
Susan.
you, Brenda. Thank you. Yes, let us take this time to join in prayer, and I invite you to place in the chat box, if you wish, anybody who you would like to be held in prayer, while we are holding in our hearts and minds those that we wish to pray with and for, and of course, all of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, and for all that they're experiencing at this time. So I invite you to close your eyes and allow my words to be your words. I breathe and I open to the limitless, infinite possibilities that exist for health and healing and for greater understanding. And as I know that God is, Source is, Creator is, I am. And as God is understanding, I am understanding. And I comprehend, I realize, I connect with the truth, the capital T truth of my beingness. And I can see the divine in myself and others and in all situations. I have the ability to identify a higher purpose in all that I witness and experience. I know that my greater understanding and insight brings peace and harmony to my life and to the lives of those I love, because we are one. And with gratitude, I am filled with appreciation for a greater understanding and for the people in my life that help me to achieve this greater intuition, this greater knowing, this greater sense of life. And I release this prayer to the universe. And so it is. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Susan. Understanding. Reverend Roxanne posed some questions this week in our newsletter, and I hope you've had the chance to think about them a little bit. Do you really know you are more than human? Do you understand the spiritual laws that are active in your life? What are you perceiving in the situations that show up in your life? Are you perceiving problems or possibilities? Well, I think this is a perfect time to examine and answer some of those questions with Reverend Roxanne Buckle this morning, a dear and long-time colleague, mentor, teacher, minister to all the communities that are here this morning. We'll settle into the present moment with a song. After the music, Reverend Roxanne will lead a short meditation, and then she'll begin to excite our understanding of understanding. So we'll begin with the music.
I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am stronger every moment, every day. My My mind is willing and my heart is open wide. I trust my instincts and let spirit be my guide. I vow to live a life that's real and pure and free, as I continue walking in this mystery. I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am grateful every moment, every day. There may be walls, there may be roadblocks in my way, but I can choose to take a higher path each day. And now I know that what I thought was safe and sound was only habit and regret that held me down. I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am kinder every moment, every day, and I'm more loving every moment, every day. I will surrender every moment, every day.
And so I invite you, if you haven't already done so, to close your outer eyes as we continue to journey together into that space in consciousness where perhaps the mind, as Susan mentioned in her opening in one of the prayers, is somewhat more stilled. We pray and meditate to still that physical mind and deepen into that place in us that knows. And so for us to be able to hear that, we work to still the mind. We don't shut out the mind. We don't turn off the mind. We attempt to still it, like the sediment when you shake a bottle of water that maybe has sand in it. You know, we let it settle. We let our minds settle, like the sediment settling to the bottom. And so for this time of deepening and stilling the mind, I invite you to let my words, guided, assisted by Reverend Linda Martella Whitsett's words in the guided meditation on the power of understanding, and I've adapted that, to just allow these words to be your words, knowing that while we may be separated in physicality, by time zones, by technology, we are truly one. And so I center my awareness above my brow and inward to the front of my brain and locate the physical seat of spiritual understanding. I inhale and exhale intentionally, drawing breath into this area of my brain, responsible for logic, mental association, planning, and impulse control. I shine the precious golden threads of the light of understanding throughout my frontal lobes, cleansing my brain and clearing foggy thinking and misunderstanding. I am the power of understanding, listening to my life and making meaningful connections between my experiences, my thoughts, my beliefs, my feelings. I comprehend, I understand, I know my essential eternal nature as I pause in this moment of stillness. And as we prepare for a time of silence, I invite you to know with me the affirmation that Brenda shared earlier. With spiritual understanding, I know everything is unfolding for my highest good. I know everything is unfolding for my highest good, even when physical appearances might suggest otherwise. The power of understanding is that gift, is that ability to know beyond the appearances, the essential nature of truth. So let us take a moment in the silence to let this affirmation of truth marinate. I know everything is unfolding for my highest good in the silence. I know that everything is unfolding for my highest good. And in that knowing, I further know and have a deeper awareness that divine understanding truly is my name and nature. And for that knowing, for that truth, for this time together in spiritual communion, I say thank you, thank you, thank you. So it is, and so I let it be. I just invite you to continue to feel the chair supporting you as we come back into a time together. And anybody who feels like for a minute to just turn your camera on, keep muted. I'd love to see your faces before we start before I get into the Sunday lesson, so I can have a deeper knowing of who's here. Hello, it's so great to see everybody. Yeah. Hello. Yeah, so that affirmation. That affirmation. I know that everything is unfolding for my highest good. Really? Everything? Are we sure? I mean, everything until the guy cuts me off, on the Queen's Way, or until that irritating person doesn't get back to me, or, name it, right? But no, truly, spiritual understanding is about knowing that everything is unfolding for my highest good. So what I decided to do today, as we look at the power of understanding, is which, as Brenda mentioned and did a wonderful job, used a quote that I was going to use, and now I don't even have to use it. It's our capacity to know spiritual truth. And we know from the talks and the class that Reverend Paul Hasselbeck gave, that thinking as our 12 powers as this team, right? This team in our consciousness that's assisting us, that's helping us in this, playing field of the human experience. Understanding is the knower, the knower. And it works with like will the chooser and faith the believer and might pass the ball to elimination the bouncer, because understanding knows that this is a moment to release something, right? So understanding is one of those. It's like, I see it on the team, like it's maybe not the star player scoring the goals, but it's doing a lot of assisting, because in this spiritual being a spiritual being, having a human experience, understanding spiritual truth is something that we bring into our awareness to deal with life, and then call on those other powers to then do what they need to do. So that's how I'm thinking about it. So what I wanted to do for this talk is I wanted to share with you 4 truths. Now, again, and I'm going to put up some slides, but there's nothing new under the sun here, okay? So right away, you're going to go, oh yeah, I've seen it, done it, whatever. What's key though is how we're using these. There really is nothing new under the sun, but it's about how are we moment by moment applying these in our lives, and in a practical way, so that they're active in our life. I think that was one of the things that Sonia read in the daily word. So I'm going to share 4 truths, what I know, and you probably know too, have been active in my life and pretty key to when I get to experience these moments of freedom, of peace. And they're getting to be more and more as I'm a work in progress. And so there's an easy way to remember these 4 that I'm going to share with you. So I'm gonna put some slides up in the screen for this Sunday lesson. And these 4 truths that I'm going to speak about have formed the acronym PAIR. Now, I know there's 4 of them and it's a pair, but you can think of 2 pairs. But anyway, PAIR. So present moment awareness, accept everything, impermanence, and everything is a reflection. So these, I was really thinking about what are these spiritual truths that I have really been utilizing. And so I thought I would just share those with you. So again, take what you will, leave the past behind, and know that sort of like reading a good book, right? We might get something that we didn't get before because we're at a different level of consciousness. We're at a different challenge that may be facing us in our lives. So it is my intention and my prayer that some of this might assist you as it has assisted me. So the first one is present moment awareness, which, is where I really believe, and I think I should put this on screen presentation mode. Yes. So present moment awareness is really, I believe, and as do the sages, and this is what I've learned, is it's really where our power is. And so, not surprisingly, that's a core teaching in Buddhism. The Buddha said, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. So, what this is kind of saying is, be where you are. Anything else is madness. And I think we've probably all experienced that, right? I know for myself that now as a grandmother and having had more time to incorporate these wisdom teachings in my life, I am much more attuned to that, and I'm able to be much more present, for example, when I'm spending time with my 10-year-old granddaughter Masha. And I've been thinking about that and reflecting on it as I spend time with her, as opposed to when I was a mother of a 10-year-old 20 some years ago. I did not spend as much time in the present moment. My mind was often elsewhere, planning for the future, and I just appreciate now how being present in the moment can really waken me to much more of what's available. And I think this is captured in this quote by Eckhart Tolle. The power for creating a better future is contained in the present moment. You create a good future by creating a good present. I love that. I love that. So one of the ways that I've discovered creating a good present, and then therefore a good future, is by observing what is going on when I can be present. So both in my mind and my body. And as Martha Creek likes to say, and I've had the great good fortune to spend a lot of time with her this year as I'm in one of her immersion programs and just did a 3-day virtual retreat last weekend. She says, I'm in a hurry to get to peace. And I would echo that I'm becoming aware that, you know what, I prefer to feel. I now know what peace and freedom feels like, both in my mind and my body. And I want to be aware when I'm not that, so that I can do something about it, right? So Ralph Waldo Emerson, the transcendentalist, and remember that the transcendentalist movement was a precursor to the Unity and New Thought movement. He said, stand guard at the portal of your mind. And I would add, stand guard at the portal of your body, as I'm becoming more and more aware of those sensations, those emotions knocking, or where the stress is showing up somewhere. And, have become much more in tune with this through the work I've been doing with Martha and through mindfulness meditation. Anyways, what does this mean to stand guard at the portal of your mind? Especially now, in this day and age, bombarded moment by moment by distractions, texts, tweets, 24/7 news channels, the constant noise of daily life. It can almost begin to think of as normal, right? And as thinking beings, and we really are thinkers in the mind of God, right? In the mind of divine mind, we are the ones in charge of the thoughts we think. And that's, Unity's third principle. And here's what I've come to know, is that when I'm paying attention to what's going on in my consciousness, which is what this really means, to be that observer, that witness, I become conscious that I have a choice in every living moment. And that's where this pivotal nature of consciousness comes in. And then this is where knowing that, the power of understanding, that I have a choice, that's where I bring onto the field and pass the ball to the power of will, which is our ability to choose. So through my power of understanding, I know I have a choice. I don't need to be a victim of that person's behavior or all that is going on around me. And, I'm catching myself sooner and sooner these days. So the power of will is that ability to make that choice, because I know through the power of understanding. So the other day I was noticing feelings of anxiety starting to creep in, and I noticed them through my, like a fluttering in my solar plexus, and my throat chakra starts to kind of constrict a little bit. And I can also become quite lethargic, sort of like that light switch is dimming. And so it had gone from bright to quite a bit darker. And what I was noticing was, and I just became curious, I wonder what that's about. And I had a meeting coming up. I'm the vice chair of the Unity Canada, and have the responsibility for organizing with a small team the Unity Canada conference that's happening in October. And I had a meeting with our communications coordinator, who was going to hear from me everything we have coming, because we're going to put out a special edition of who are the speakers and what times and yada, 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 right? And I didn't feel as prepared as I would have liked. So this fear of not being seen as prepared or perfect is something that I work on, and that'll come to the fourth one, which is all about the shadow. But I caught myself going briefly into the past and beating myself up for making a decision to to make choices to do some things other than what I had done. So I made a decision. I kind of went into self-compassion, and I made a decision in the moment to just go ahead with the meeting and be vulnerable and admit where I was. In fact, we ended up having a great laugh as I asked her if I could share screen, and told her and showed her, this is the agenda so far for the Unity Canada conference. So we had a great laugh. And then we kind of brainstormed, and she said, I bet you have a lot in your brain. Why don't we use this as a working session? And you just put down what you know. And so we were sharing screen, and we were filling stuff in. And in fact, you know, it turned out I had quite a bit, but I hadn't really organized it all that well. And so, and there's still more to do, but by the end of the meeting, this is what we had. You know, we had the days broken out, and I had you know, different things confirmed already, like the musician, and we're going to have Martha at the opening, and then we have some workshops coming up, and when the AGM is, and all that. All that to say that had I, you know, I really was beating myself up because I was, you know, going into the past and being regretful for how I had spent my time, but instead I just came to this present moment and said, it is what it is, and I allowed myself to be vulnerable. So that was just a small example of that. And Ernest Holmes, the great New Thought leader, said, yesterday is not, tomorrow is not, but today, bright with hope and filled with promise, is mine. Today I live. And I change it to, in this moment I live. In this moment I live. Yeah, and so this brings me to the second of the PAIR, acceptance. So as spiritual beings having a human experience, I can get so wrapped up in the spiritual stuff, that I can forget the basic tenets of being human. I used to think that moving more fully into my divine identity meant erasing my humanness, like eradicating ego, like I gotta like just be spiritual and not be human. And in fact, the exact opposite is true. I've now come to realize the folly in that, and that embracing my humanness, not erasing it, is the key to living more fully into my divine identity. So now I embrace, don't erase. I shouldn't say I do it all the time, but I can catch myself trying to erase my humanness. So I embrace my humanness. So key to this notion is acceptance. And that's all of the work that Martha Creek does through the adaptation of the Byron Katie Loving What Is. Martha says, you don't have to like it, you don't have to love it, just don't argue with what is. And you certainly don't have to condone it. But when I resist, I find, or I argue with it, I suffer. I don't know about you. Like, is there anything that you keep, oh, I wish that person wouldn't do that, or I wish this wasn't showing up in my life, or I wish the, you know, da, 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 da. So a simple example, just to anchor this concept, is this. Let's say you've planned to meet a friend for a walk, and I've done that over the pandemic, and it rains. How dare it rain when I plan to walk? That's kind of like being out of touch with reality, right? Because you know what? Some days it rains, some days it doesn't, in spite of what the song says. And I love that song, but the rain is not gone. The rain will come back. And so the key to living a life of freedom and peace is to accept those polarities and everything in between. Some days it rains and some days it doesn't. And so I love this because Henry Wadsworth Longfellow said, for after all, the best thing one can do when it's raining is to let it rain. So acceptance means to include it all, even the irritating drivers, even the rule breakers, even the disharmonious relationship, even the cancer diagnosis, even the, and those messy emotions. That's been a big one for me. So I really encourage you to really think about attending the workshop that Martha's going to be giving on July 18th. And then again in September, Unity Windsor is going to be hosting a workshop with Martha. And we've been talking about, while it won't be part 2, you don't have to attend the first one. It will be a continuation because this is such a big topic for us to be unpacking. And so I notice what's going on by being present the P in the pair, right? P-A-I-R. And I notice I'm in resistance. I'm suffering. And one of my favorite authors, Anne Lamott, says, expectations are resentments under construction. So going back to the meeting a friend and going for a walk in the rain, let's say I've created for myself, you know, it's all this in the mind, right? An attachment to the idea that it won't rain when I walk and with my good friend, and we haven't seen each other for a while, so we're going to stop by the river and sit on a bench and so days before, I obsessively watch the weather forecast and then start to get a little worried and notice I'm in the future there. Yeah. And then when it does rain, I'm quite upset, you know, and our walk is kind of spoiled because I had envisioned us, you know, everything I'd envisioned is now not possible. And so instead, I'm complaining the whole time, feeling icky in my raincoat, suffering. So do you get that? So I create my suffering through my attachment to this idea that it shouldn't rain, when in fact we know it does rain, right? And I know that that's a really simple example, but I think sometimes these simple examples can be an invitation for us to lean into, where am I doing that in my life? Where am I doing that in my life? And to pay attention to when we use the word should or shouldn't. It shouldn't rain. Children shouldn't die, war shouldn't happen, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean you have to like it. It doesn't mean you have to condone it, but we're more available to be in a space of positive action and prayer and all of those things when we're not shoulding about those things. And so the Buddha said, the root of all suffering is attachment. So we can see in what ways did suffering occur in my example about raining for my walk with my friend, because of my attachment to it can't rain. And then when it rains, I'm devastated. I missed out on stuff. I wasn't present, right? I wasn't present to the moment and for being in a deep conversation and to noticing what I could notice in the glory and beauty when it does rain. So doing this work allows me to embrace reality, embrace my humanness, embrace the human condition rather than erase it. Sometimes it rains and sometimes it doesn't. And in that acceptance, I can be more present, take sensible actions, right? Sometimes people follow the rules and sometimes they don't. Sometimes my kids won't return my calls and sometimes they will. So the power of understanding is working with its teammate, the power of wisdom here, to discern the full spectrum of the human condition at work, within me, all around me, in all the people I interact with, in all that's going on in the world. And so my invitation to you is include it all. What are you resisting? What are you holding outside your consciousness? What reality are you arguing with? It might be in a relationship. It might be in something to do with your body, your finances, what's going on in the world. What are you arguing with? And so one of the things that I did a while ago was, I forget where I got it, but I do my version of the serenity prayer, and I use this all the time, usually when I'm falling asleep. Divine Mind, grant me the serenity to accept that which I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know it's me. So as we more fully embrace, rather than attempt to erase our humanness and accept what is, we get to lean into, rather than away from, the notion that this too shall pass, which brings me to the I in pair, impermanence. Why is this important for peace and freedom? Well, understanding it can ease us through times of transition and what we might label as painful. I recently fell on a hike and experienced some hip pain and lessened mobility. Knowing this, hear this, the knower was, knowing this helped me. And to know impermanence can help prevent us from getting too attached to the good stuff too, right? I was recently, so for this 3-day virtual retreat I was attending with Martha, I decided to rent a waterfront Airbnb on the Madawaska River just to be totally immersed and not have to worry about household things. And so I settled into the place on the evening before the retreat, gorgeous place, right on the water. Woman did an amazing job with the gardens. And on that was the Wednesday night, and then on the first day of the retreat, the Thursday, it was pretty nice. You remember a couple weeks ago, the week before last, and in the breaks in between our sessions, I'd go outside, stand on the grass, go down to the water, walk around, and I remember having the thought, because it was very blissful, I hope it stays like this the entire time. What's happening there, right? You know, and so I brought myself back to the present moment, and you know, and spoiler alert, it rained all day Friday and Saturday. And of course, I still enjoyed it. It was beautiful. And had I become super attached to the, it needs to stay like this for my experience, that would have been a really, I would have suffered, right? And so the better we understand it, the better understanding we'll have of the world we live in, right? This notion of impermanence and the situations we find ourselves walking through and working through. And this one I pay particular attention to, because this teaching is so prevalent across so many of the faith traditions. So in Christian scripture, of course, and it came to pass, it occurs 397 times in the King James version of the Bible, starting in Genesis and going right straight through to the gospel. So this is like, it's not, you know, it's a pretty significant thing. And in Islam, one of the most commonly recited surahs, so the chapters in the Quran are called surahs, contains the line, truly, so surely with hardship comes ease. Yesterday, my son was trying to teach me this in Arabic, and I practiced, but I can't remember it. But so, and then he was telling me this gets repeated a lot. So this surah gets repeated many times. So it's like, we really have to know this. So surely with hardship comes ease, which is a version of, and it came to pass. And of course, in Buddhism, it's the core teaching, right? And according to Thich Nhat Hanh, it is not impermanence that makes us suffer. What makes us suffer is wanting things to be permanent when they are not. We need to learn to appreciate the value of impermanence. And what I find particularly helpful in this one is this take on impermanence is it's not merely an adage to help us through the tough times. Is it actually hits me at, it becomes foundational to leaning more fully into a quality of life and ties back to the present moment. So impermanence motivates me to be more mindful of each moment and value each moment and its preciousness, knowing that it is impermanent. And so, you know, when I am experiencing good health and mobility, I can take actions that support that without a feeling like, oh my God, I hope this doesn't go away, I'm so attached to it, but just a focus on it in appreciation and gratitude because of the knowing that it is impermanent. Similarly, with a relationship with a person I love, knowing that that too is impermanent, the impermanence teaches me to respect and value every moment and all the precious things offered by the relationship. So that's a good reminder when I can get caught up in the disharmonious aspects. And in unity, while impermanence is not specifically taught, like not in those words, we teach in unity metaphysics about the relative realm, which is the conditional, the human, physical realm, that everything is temporary and changes. Do I have a slide for this? Oh no, I'm going to come to that. And that behind the relative realm is the absolute realm. So the relative realm, the realm of physicality, is temporary, changeable, and finite. And then we have the absolute realm of spirit, of truth, which is permanent, unchanging, eternal, and infinite. And in fact, that is a key foundation to actually understanding affirmative prayer. And so in affirmative prayer, what we do is we don't pray for conditions, right? We don't pray for, oh, please make this hip get better, right? We pray for the permanent, eternal, infinite knowing of wholeness. So and this is where I call it, like this really ties into this, what I call an affirmative prayer recipe, right? So at first we notice when we're attaching to impermanence, and we do a spiritual denial, which is, you know, I give no power to this pain that's occurring in the hip, you know, so insert temporary human condition, right? Because it can start to take up a lot of our space. So I give that no power. That's a spiritual denial. And instead I affirm my innate wholeness and health. And so that's where we use that divine quality. So impermanence does have a place in the unity teachings, and primarily in our use of denials and affirmation, as we deny the power. We don't deny the human condition, we deny the power we give it, and instead affirm that which we know, that which we understand and know to be true. And so it's important that we don't use impermanence to spiritually bypass, like, oh, this too shall pass, and so I'm not even going to think about it, or to engage in metaphysical malpractice. I can't tell you the number of times people have said to me, like, I'm suffering, and they quip, oh, this too shall pass. You know, there's a time and a place, and that's not it. But just to know this as an understanding for a law in our life. And so my favorite spiritual denial and version of this too shall pass of all times, and I use it constantly, and I've taught this in the prayer classes, is by Eric Butterworth. And it is this: I accept the reality of the situation, but not its permanence. And this is from Spiritual Economics. So in that there is this, again, the A of pair, P-A-I, impermanence, is I accept this impermanence, right? I accept this reality and know that it is not permanent. And so that is a great gateway into then having the consciousness cleared for the affirmation, for the planting of those affirmative seeds. And finally, the R. So we've done, right? Present moment, accept everything, like embrace our humanness, impermanence, right? And then the one important truth I've come to really know and accept and continue to work on is this: that everything is a reflection of me. Life is a mirror. Life is a mirror. So there's an old Sufi story. I've told this, and I really love this story. It's about a philosopher who had an appointment to debate with the Sufi master and teacher Nasruddin. And when the philosopher arrived at Nasruddin's house, he discovered that Nasruddin wasn't home. So infuriated, the philosopher picked up a piece of chalk from the road and wrote "stupid oaf" in big letters on Nasruddin's gate. Stormed back home. So as soon as Nasruddin got home and saw this, he rushed to the philosopher's house and he says, "I'm so sorry for not having been at home. I had forgotten," he said, "that you were to call. And of course, I remembered the appointment as soon as I saw that you had left your name on my gate." Stupid oaf. So here's the invitation. Here's the invitation. What names are you calling others or yourself? Lazy, greedy. These are all things I've called myself and others. Self-centered, bitch. Loudmouth, know-it-all, incompetent, uncommitted, fat slob, arrogant, judgmental, disrespectful, lying, unspiritual, condescending. So as the wise teacher Nasruddin suggests, those are all actually names for ourselves, right? What we are annoyed about or can't stand in another is a reflection of the buried, rejected, mostly despised aspects of ourselves, otherwise known as the shadow. We all have a shadow. Nobody's immune to it. It's a part of the human condition. Remember the A, acceptance? So if you think you're going to get through life thinking you don't have a shadow, I'm just going to disabuse you of that now. We all have a shadow. And I feel that there has been nothing in my spiritual journey as important to discover, claim, and integrate as my shadow. And I will, in fact, it's so important that I will, in fact, be donating a 3-part virtual workshop on the shadow later on in the year. I've taken a workshop that I developed. I did it for Unity Ottawa several years ago. I adapted it for Unity Victoria in person, and now I'm going to be developing it virtually. And we'll be doing it as a fundraiser for USCO, and it'll be late October, early November. But for now, I just wanted to remind us of the importance of the shadow for greater freedom and spiritual growth. Deepak Chopra says, the path to enlightenment includes not only the search for the divine, but also the total acceptance of the shadow self. So I've been doing shadow work now for about 10 years, and I'm a work in progress, of course. But since I've started to claim my bitchiness, my laziness, my lateness, my incompetence, my self-centeredness, and quite recently my spoiledness, my moodiness, to mention just a fraction. And the example I'm going to share with you is I also am going to be claiming my disorganizedness. I felt a lot more free and much more peaceful. And that's because in order to express and live from the wholeness that we are, we have to claim all aspects of ourselves. It doesn't mean we have to act them out. It doesn't, that if we don't claim our shadow qualities, we exist feeling fractured. Like there's always something more, something missing, but we can't quite place our finger on it. And so as a result, we create and live in pockets of dysfunction throughout our life. And in unity, we believe we are all interconnected, right? That we are one. And what oneness means is that we may appear as individuals. Like it may appear that Sheila is sitting in the kitchen separate from me, and I'm here in the dining room, and you're sitting in Kitchener, and someone else is sitting here in Ottawa. But we are actually not isolated and random. Each of us is a microcosm that contains the macrocosm. Said another way, we all contain the imprint of the entire universe within ourselves. As Rumi said, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. And that's wholeness. Each of us possess every existing spiritual and human quality. And this understanding that we contain everything that we see in others can really rock our world if we let it, and if we can move through the discomfort of realizing this, because it's meaningful work, and it can be uncomfortable. But this too shall pass. The discomfort. And we're conditioned that we are different from other people. And this has been crucial for me to unlearn. There is nothing that I can see or perceive that I am not. I want you to hear that. There's nothing that I can see or perceive that I am not. Because if I wasn't that, I wouldn't be able to see it. And the purpose of our journey is to restore ourselves to wholeness. And one of the tools that we can use is shadow work. So if I did not possess a certain quality, I wouldn't be able to see it in others. And this is an essential truth to understanding why doing shadow work is so powerful. And without doing shadow work on the conscious spiritual journey, I believe, and I've experienced it myself, is we hit a wall, or what I call the glass ceiling of spiritual growth, continually searching outside myself for enlightenment and working to rearrange the outer, right? Especially other people and situations. And it's an exhausting and unhappy road to take. It doesn't mean we never take action, but the action is located first from an understanding of myself. So the combination of wearing the mask of qualities judged as acceptable and dragging that bag filled with unacceptable qualities is so exhausting. So it's important to note the shadow develops unconsciously. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. So I think Brenda or Susan mentioned earlier in the service that these challenging times, if we become immobilized by them and cease to be able to function, it's really an invitation, because these conflicts that arise are really opportunities to see that what is unconscious is being made conscious. It's like that's the gift in conflict, or the gift in challenge, right? And it doesn't go away. Like our shadow doesn't go away when we decide to believe that we are divine. We can believe that we're divine, but then we also have to do the work to integrate all of those aspects that we've been pushing down. And Unity minister and author Robert Brummett says in his book, Birthing a Greater Reality, that our evolutionary task at this juncture is to reclaim our essential nature. And we begin by reclaiming the lost part of ourselves, our shadow selves. And so this week, just before I close, I had a situation with a co-worker. I do some part-time administration and business development work with my son's research and consulting company. And I noticed my irritation arising as this person was asking for more and more. Could you get me this? I forgot to keep track of this. Could you get me, asking for things that had already been sent to her. And I was really getting irritated, like really. And I was looking for people to buy into it with me. And you know, it's bad when we're looking for also, people to join us in that, to join me in that. And I'm suffering, right? And so what I realized that this coworker was reflecting back to me, life is a mirror, those parts of me that I need to accept, that at times I am super disorganized and lack focus and require others. Like how many times Sheila has had to bail me out when I'm late with my personal administration stuff like taxes and getting my driver's license renewed. And so, I was even in Victoria and Sheila renewed my license back here in Ontario and sent it to me. So I own that. And it was interesting that I was like just being so high and mighty about it. And that's the clue, is when we're really super irritated. And again, not feeling good, like being aware, like this doesn't feel good. And as much as I'd like to, continue to blame someone else, I knew that it was my continued dispossession of that aspect of myself. Now, it doesn't mean I become a divine doormat, but I was able to lovingly set a boundary and suggest ways that she could find the information on her own. But you see how when I'm accepting that about myself, the anxiety gets discharged, and I'm able to show up and be present in a way that's much more functional and much more, I'm able to set a loving boundary. So that's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. And what I love about unity is it really is it's a spiritual path of empowerment. And with that comes a lot of personal responsibility. And the journey for me continues to be much more grace-filled when I bring my power of understanding, of knowing that, that these spiritual laws, these teachings, like being in the present moment, accepting the human condition, that everything really is impermanent in the human condition, and then seeing that everything is also a reflection of aspects of me. I really do believe that it allows me to lean a little bit more fully into life situations and relationships, and really understand how my highest good really is being revealed. So I really hope that this has been helpful to you, and wish you a wonderful week ahead. And remember, pair. Thank you so much.